Hello, hello, Joanna Fortune. It's so nice to see you.
And you too, Laura. Delighted to chat to you.
It seems like a lifetime ago since I actually saw you in person. I've been lucky enough to interview you several times over the years, but this whole virtual way of working has its advantages, but
Yeah,
you do miss people though, don't you?
I definitely do. And I'm finding since this lockdown, this most recent one, much harder. And I realized that about myself that I'm an card carrying extrovert. I need other people. So I'm really feeling the impact. I know I'm not alone in that as well, that we're all getting it. This is great, but it would be better to be in person, wouldn't it? Yeah.
We're looking forward to brighter days ahead.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I suppose hello as well to everybody who is watching us this evening. Thanks so much for joining us and for tuning in. I suppose, Joanna, we'll start maybe by giving people a little bit of insight into why we're having this discussion this evening. And I suppose this chat is thanks to Littlewoods Ireland and CyberSafeKids because they are community partners for 2021. And from the point of view of Littlewoods, they recognise that many of their customers are parents, mums and dads and guardians. And they also appreciate the fact that they sell a lot of technology. So for them, I suppose, being able to facilitate a discussion like this, it's really important and to impart that information that you have and the advice that you're going to give us this evening is a priority for them. And of course, CyberSafeKids, what a wonderful charity. And I know you've done an awful lot of work with them before.
Fantastic. And I know not only as a professional, but as a parent myself, it's a resource that I go to all the time. You know, they're around since 2015. And in those really a few short years, CyberSafeKids have spoken to over 27,000 primary school age children in so many schools, and it's amazing. So I think if you're an educator, if you're a teacher, parent, get onto CyberSafeKids website, have a look at all the resources there. Like you said, they're a charity, but they also have a very strong education function. And I think all of us, not just children in schools, but us adults and parents, that's really the type of questions I've been getting, Laura, is how can I learn more? And I'm just so grateful that there is a group like CyberSafeKids who can guide us all in that way.
Very much so. And interesting you're saying, how can I learn more? Because look, from my experience, and I have two boys here, they're almost 8 and 10, they are so tech savvy. It's frightening, actually.
Yeah, it
They're
is.
really in the shade.
And I think that age you've just mentioned is like peak time, isn't it?
Okay.
Because their play patterns really change in that middle childhood stage of 8 to 12, and they move away from what we parents might understand as more traditional, creative, imaginative play. And they move more towards like football, rounders, scooters, bikes, and of course, gaming and
Mm.
digital play. So we do see a big change at that age, but they hit the ground running, don't they? As soon as they have those devices in their hands.
Which is brilliant because we live in an age of technology. And I suppose somebody told me before that, it is not something to be fearful of as a parent. This is going to open so many doors and potentially careers for these kids when they're older. But we just see the fear in the unknown a lot of the times. We're quite negative in the narrative with the conversations around tech. I'm trying to change that conversation now to be a bit more positive and engaged in what they're doing.
And there are so many pro-social benefits, and there is so much learning to be had. And, we've never had communities of all kinds and, so much diversity and so much inclusion at our fingertips, and that our children can engage in conversations that we really didn't have access to before. And of course, those are the myriad of pro-social
Mm.
benefits, but it comes with that cautionary piece, as you said, that parents are like, but what if? And the unknown. And it's largely because it's moving at a pace that we as parents might struggle to keep up with. But also it's how can I be sure that my child is safe online in this online environment that is away from me. And even if they're right in front of me, they are away from me when they're in
Mm.
this world. And I think that's something that it's really important that we shine a light on and look at how we can be interested in what interests our kids. And this interests our kids.
Very much so. And when you're talking about our children being safe online, the CyberSafeKids annual report had some very stark statistics. I got a bit of a fright when I saw them, to be quite honest with you, Joanna. The first one that jumped out of me, 93% of 8 to 12-year-olds have their own smart device. And my two would be included in that,
Yeah.
93%. So this isn't a small minority of
No.
kids of that age group around the country. Pretty much all of them are online.
Absolutely. And, I think that kind of, for me, aligns with a lot of the questions I get from parents of this age group. Again, again, it's that middle childhood age group, which is not about, should I give my child a device? It's, okay, they actually have it. And now retrospectively, what should I put in place now that they have it? Because I don't know that I thought this through. I don't know how I really envisaged how important this was going to be in their life. So yeah, this statistic, it hits you, doesn't it? That 93, because we're basically saying pretty much all kids, all parents, this affects.
Exactly. 31% of children game with people that they don't know in real life. And that is terrifying. From our experience here at home, our kids have just started joining a game where they can talk to other people only in the last month or two. And I think it's been fantastic for them because they've been able to engage with friends when they're not able to see them in real life. But you always have to go in and say, who's that? Who are you talking to? You know, and you can't always be there asking, especially if you're working from home too. A bit scary.
And they don't want you asking because then you're interrupting the game. And often with children playing online with people they don't know, they don't consider it like, you know, that classic conversation we've had with our children from the youngest years of stranger danger and don't talk to strangers. They're like, but I'm not talking to them. I'm not hanging out with them. We're playing a game. Their focus is on the game rather than the person. But it doesn't mean that they might not overhear something or somebody might have not the best of intentions on there. And thankfully, that stuff is quite rare. And it's important to say that it is quite rare. But at the same time, I think if you know your child is talking to people in that virtual way and people they don't know, get an extra headset and listen in, because it's not just the other people. I think it's really interesting, Nora, to hear how our children change, how their narrative changes, how their tone and, you know, the language they use, how that changes when they're online and they're, you know, aroused by adrenaline and the excitement of the game and they're totally engaged. And you go, oh my goodness, who's this kid? I've never heard my child play like this before. So I think it's okay to get a headset and say, I'm just going to listen in. I promise I won't interrupt you and throw you off your game, but I just want to learn a bit more and just hear the voices that your child is hearing.
That is a genius idea. I love it. But it's so clever and so simple, because then you'll just get peace of mind from appreciating that it is a guy that they know from their class, or it is somebody else's cousin. And if there's any strange, as you say, it's very rare. We don't have to be scaremongering here. It's just more about being vigilant and being aware, isn't it?
It is. And again, it's that fine line which goes right through childhood, particularly if you're on the cusp of adolescent parenting, you'll know this well, of being interested but not intrusive. So you don't want to be coming in, and you know yourself, if you're in the middle of a TV show and someone comes in going, oh, what are you watching? Who's that? And who's this? And how are they? And I thought that, and you just go, get out of here, leave me alone. Your child will be the same. They know this world, they're immersed in it. So be interested, but not intrusive. And afterwards do the reflective piece of, I'd really like if I could learn a bit more about this game. So when you're not in the middle of it with these other people online, can you teach me how to do it? Can you guide me how to do it? And just gradually insert yourself into their world in an interested way. And that's about engagement. And I think that's really important, be it gaming or anything they're interested in, that we should share that interest with them.
I think it's wonderful that the stats also taken from the CyberSafeKids, annual report are saying that the majority of teachers are also dealing with online safety incidents in the classroom. And I think that is a brilliant initiative, because they're hearing it in school as well as home. We could maybe be a bit naggy sometimes, but if they're getting it and they're having a conversation with their peers, that might resonate a bit more.
Oh, I think that's so important on so many issues, that our children are hearing the same message in the same way from the important adults in their lives. And teachers are very important adults in the lives of children. And I often think we underestimate how important our teachers are. And I do think that's been a lesson for all of us, thankfully, over COVID, is to see actually the loss of teachers in our children's lives was really, really impactful. So I think, you know, parents and teachers getting on the same page about this. I think it's why CyberSafeKids working with schools and parents is a really good collaborative approach. And I'd like to see more of that, you know.
Hear, hear. Couldn't agree more. I don't think that my teaching abilities have been up to scratch over the last year, to be quite honest with you.
I know. Fair play to teachers.
Exactly. We've had so many questions in from Littlewoods Ireland customers and fans of CyberSafeKids. And we're going to get through a few of them now. But can we just address the fact that it's been an extraordinary year first, and the fact that through no fault of their own, parents have had to facilitate perhaps more screen time than they would have liked, because they may be dealing with, you know, homework for 2 or 3 other children, and the oldest child might be finished, or they could both have online Zoom meetings, and there's a child, on a rainy day, not able to go and play in the garden. There may not be a garden available for them to play in. So I think that kids have had probably more screen time, and I think that we're really beating ourselves up about that.
Oh, for sure. That's a universal truth. So I think we can all start by exhaling, going, this is all of us. This isn't if or maybe, this is definitely. And if we were having this conversation this time last year, I think my answer would be very different, Laura, because, what we were looking at in the early stages of this pandemic and lockdown was particularly children under 7 years old, early childhood. Their important hub of social development is parents, is siblings, and increased time with parents actually had a myriad of pro-social benefits for them. However, 8 to 12-year-olds and up to and including mid-adolescents, so we're talking up to 16-year-olds really, they actually have always struggled with this because their important hub of social development is anyone but parents and siblings. It's the outside world. It's their peer group. It's a process of separating and experimenting with who I am and establishing whoever I am, it's other than you. And that's really important. And they've been denied access to their peer group at what is peak brain development. So we are concerned about that cohort and that group of young people. And so online world has been really important to them because it has been the only way that they've sustained those connections. But you're right, we've all relaxed the rules because we've had to, because as parents, we've had to, parent as if we're not working, work as if we're not parenting. And oh, by the way, follow a curriculum at home as though we could also be kind of teachers in the middle of all that. It's impossible. So something had to give. And I think universally, it's been the rules around screen time. Now, there are creative ways that we could look at it, because from a child's point of view, which is often where I come at this as well, is that's been you saying, here are the rules. You can only have this amount of time. Do you know what? The rules have changed. You can watch as much of that as you like and sit there and watch an entire movie. In fact, watch 2 of them back to back. And now we're beginning to say, okay, we might be moving back towards something that's more predictable and a return to outside world activities and contact. Maybe I should put the rules back in place. Our children are not going to high five us and go, you're dead right, good on you with the rules. They're going to say, hang on a minute, the landscape has changed. I've adjusted to these rules. So they're not going to do that. We have to do this in a collaborative way. We have to come to them. I think as parents, it's really good to use paradox with kids and say, I made a mistake. I got it wrong. I got this. This is on me. I need you now to help me make it right. Because actually, I think we've all been using our screens way too much. Me too. I'd like to use mine a lot less. Can you help me? Here's what we're going to do as a family and reestablish a new family contract around screen time. Now, look, Laura, that being said, I would say to everybody out there, there are creative and playful ways to offset some of the impact of prolonged screen time. And just really quickly, particularly we're talking quite a bit about this middle childhood age, is to make a scavenger hunt, household items, like put down kettle, toaster, table, chairs, whatever you want to put on it, give it to them on a list with a pencil. And as they watch whatever it is, so that you can do your hour-long work Zoom call, they tick off on the list as they see the items. So they're not just absorbed into watching. They're kind of going, oh, wait, lamp, I've got a lamp. And they tick it off. And at the end, you can come in and say, so look, what did you get? What was on the list? What did you miss? And then you could switch it into a director game and say, if you were director of this movie and you got to yell cut, what would you delete? And what would you put in instead? And how would that change the ending? Or what new character would you design and introduce? Who would they be? What would their powers be? Let's draw that out. All of a sudden, you're making it a much more engagement-based activity, and you can offset some of that hyper-stimulus that some of our children are impacted at by too much time online. So there are ways that we can approach this without giving ourselves really hard time. That's what I really want to get that across from the outset, and based on some of the questions coming in, that we have to be a bit kinder to ourselves at these times.
That is great advice. And I think many of us are preparing ourselves for a battle, as you say, when things slowly open up again, and hoping that by outdoor sporting activities coming back, if your child is into sport, that they might notice that they're not getting the screen time they used to get. Of course, they're going to notice.
They're definitely going to notice, and they love it. And of course they do, because it's exciting and it's really hyper stimulating and there's a lot going on. But it's about kind of integrating the lessons from it into their real world and making it as relational as possible. That's the real impact. Because I think, in these extraordinary times we're living through, as we keep calling them, screen time has been important about connection. But it's a short-term substitute. It cannot be a long-term substitute for in-person connection. I think once our children can get back to team sports, extracurricular activities, they will be delighted to do so.
I think you're dead right. On that note, we'll kick off a few
Yeah.
of our viewer questions. I have the names of the people who sent in the questions, which I won't say.
Okay.
But this is a question that came in, and it's funny because we got loads of the same question, but for different age groups. But this was, what is the recommended length of screen time for an 8-year-old child per day? Can you have a category per age, Joanna, when it comes to screen time?
In a really general way, you can, but I kind of caution against this being quite prescriptive, because no two 8-year-olds are the same. You know, one person's 8-year-old might be able to watch a movie, do a show and play a game and then go, okay, I'm all done with that, I'm off to do something else. Somebody else's 8-year-old might spend 45 minutes online, and the idea of turning it off can send them into a meltdown. And I think that's really important that we watch language here, that, you know, a child having a meltdown is quite different to a child having a tantrum. You know, a tantrum, there is a degree of control over. They're often developmentally appropriate, and they're largely a performance. There's no point in me tantruming if you're not there to witness it. I need you to see how you have displeased me, and that's what I'm showing you. A meltdown is something else. A meltdown is I am sensory so overstimulated that I cannot process what's been going in here, and that sharp shock, no matter how many times you've said 10 more minutes, you may as well say 2 weeks, because time is such an abstract concept at this age, that actually I feel it's happened to me abruptly, and I'm having to shift from this virtual cognitive hyperstimulation into the now moment, and it's too sharp a movement, ergo I melt down. And in that situation, I have no control. I'm not doing this to be difficult. I am doing this because I'm having a difficulty making the transition. So I think you have to kind of step back in this question and say, what is the answer for my 8-year-old? Generally speaking, and again, here I say I won't be prescriptive, but now I
have an 8-year-old, I'm writing this down. Yeah. Generally speaking, what should it be?
Generally, we would say 2 hours a day is enough, okay, for anybody aged kind of, 7, 8 upwards. Okay. I would even include us adults in that, or we are all spending actually in reality up to 7 hours a day on screens. So I think just be mindful of our own use. And again, that's general. I would, with this question, because it did come in so many times in so many guises, the important thing here is to balance screen time with other healthy behaviors. Okay. That's going to be outdoor play. That's going to be family play, that's going to be more interactive play, more imaginative play. And I know parents go, oh, but 8 to 12 and imaginative play. We do see that 8 to 12-year-olds are not getting anything near the imaginative play they need. But the research shows that if we, parents, important adults, if we make imaginative play available and appealing, that age group will migrate towards it just as much as they do to screen-based play. Actually, what happens when play patterns change at this age is we parents tend to stop playing creatively and imaginatively with our children 8 to 12 years old, because we see, oh, they've outgrown that, they're into other things now, and we let that happen instead of keeping the imaginative piece there. And it's why I do like things like the director's game. Oh, you've read a book, you've watched a show, you're into a game. If you were the designer, what would you do differently? As soon as you're doing that, you're engaging them in imaginative play. As soon as you get them wondering, I wonder if, and I wonder what would happen. And if you were president of the world, what 3 things would you change first, and why, and how, and what would happen? That's imaginative play. We don't have to, sometimes we think, oh, that's all about, make-believe, and that you can do it in a really creative way, but it is important. I would say okay, let's aim for 2 hours a day. Let's kind of say we won't hit that all the time. So instead look for an active 15 minutes for every hour of screen time. Okay. Try to keep it that way, especially in the 8 to 12. If they're younger, I want an active 15 minutes for every half hour screen time. Everything pauses in the world these days, everything. So you can say, even if it is, hi, can you come here and find me a tin of beans in the back of the press? Could you open the tin of beans and pour them into a tin and just stir them for, oh, grand, in you go and play your game again. You've had your active, interactive 15 minutes. If you can make sure that every hour they've been online is balanced with 15 active minutes, I think you're going to get more of a healthy behavior balance.
That's really helpful. Sneak in that little chore.
I know, peel the veggies, anything like that, sweep the floor.
Anything.
Yeah.
Love it. This is an interesting question. Should you turn off your child's device before bedtime? And this is one that, is particularly relevant to our house, because we don't allow tech time for the most part during the day, when one of us is here to mind them properly and not both working at the same time from home. So we don't allow tech time until the evening. And I'm kind of
Right.
thinking, am I overstimulating them right before bedtime?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the advice would be no screen time an hour before bedtime. And
Okay.
that applies to us grown-ups, by the way, everybody, as much as the children. And
Yeah.
certainly 30 minutes before our own bedtime. And it's interesting, Laura, I was doing school talks back in the days when we could do this, going into schools and talking to teenagers, second, third years, so kind of 14, 15
Okay.
years old. And I used to do this thing, a show of hands, who in the room, the only time their phone or digital device is turned off is when the battery dies. 100% of hands, no matter what kind of school, location, background, none of that mattered. It was 100% of hands. And then if I'd say hands up, the first thing you do when you open your eyes and the last thing you do before closing your eyes is touch your phone, 100% of hands. So we know that this is something that we say, oh, well, ideally no screens before bed, but it's not happening. I think we have to lead by positive example. I think we have to power off our devices collectively at home an hour before bedtime.
But the older teenagers thinking just about ordinary times, and hopefully they will return to the classroom next week. So they're in school all day, and a lot of them would get a sizable chunk of homework to do in the evening.
Yeah.
And then there might be helping to prepare dinner, and then sitting down for a meal, and then washing up afterwards. So the only actual space of time that they might have might be from 7 for an hour. So does that mean that we should be sort of rearranging the schedule throughout the afternoon?
Ideally, yes. Ideally, yes. And the reason being that the screen is hyperstimulating. It's keeping, in terms of even just the science of the brain and our sleep, we're not actually going through the REM cycles appropriately. We're not getting the right kind of sleep. We're not getting that deep pattern of sleep that allows us to wake rested. Often, and I'm sure some of us this will resonate, you're waking and you feel a bit agitated and edgy. You feel like, gosh, I feel like I've been running and running while I've been sleeping. I'm actually quite tired as I wake. And maybe it's because we've had too much screen time ourselves. And I think it's about, treating it like an experiment. And I did that. I asked the kids that I was working with in these schools, I was saying, who would do a 10-day experiment for me and turn off your devices from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m.? So ideally an hour before bed and while you'd be asleep. And I only got 10% take up. And in fairness to them, the rest of them were like, oh, we just don't want to lie to you because we're not going to do that. I was like, I appreciate
they were honest
the
to their
honesty.
approach. I love
But
it.
the 10% who did do it and did see it through, they noticed,
Did they?
more. Yes. And they filled out a questionnaire at the end saying they felt more rested. There was less tension in their relationship with their parents. They felt that they were managing schoolwork and homework better and that they felt generally happier. And when I said who would keep it up, nobody, because they also felt they'd missed so much interaction with their peers. They'd missed out on events. So we underestimate how much of connectivity, and I mean connectivity not through a Wi-Fi, but actually relational connectivity is happening on phones. What we want is that it is not the only way that our kids are connecting with their friends. I think, and again, COVID is a caveat here, but ideally that we would facilitate your friends are always welcome here. You can spend time together in our home as a family. We're going to sit and talk. We're going to play and be playful together. We're just going to check in with each other. Try to insert having your hot shower, your warm bath before bed, because at least that means there's 20 minutes before bed that isn't on a screen. I think trying to make small changes here could make big differences.
Could make a huge difference. Lots of questions in, and you mentioned this earlier on. At what age should a child be before getting them a smartphone? And another question that came in a lot is, my child says everyone in their class has TikTok or everyone in their class is playing Fortnite. What should I do? So are we bowing to peer pressure, and trying to keep them included with their peers?
I think we are.
What should we do?
Tell us. Pester power exists because it works. Like, it's so effective. And children are masters at the art of pester power. They wrote the book on it, not us parents. We're playing catch up here. So they know, oh, but please, but if I, and then I, and no better than a child 8 to 12 to do the fairness, because they have a pronounced sense of justice and fairness developmentally at that age. So yourself, no better than a 9-year-old to remind you 2 weeks ago on a rainy Tuesday morning, you told my sibling they could do exactly what you're telling me I can't do. You don't know what you did yesterday, so they've got you on the back foot. Pester power, my friends can, everyone can, I'm the only one who isn't. It's really important that we acknowledge and empathize. We accept and empathize. It must be really hard for you to feel like all your friends have something that you don't have. Part of my job of being a parent is sometimes that I'm going to do things you feel that are unfair, but I believe are the right thing for you. And in our family, this is how we do it. And I accept that you're cross, and I'm really sad that that's the way it's affecting you. However, it doesn't change what's going to happen. So you can approach it in that way. I think as well, you know, when it comes to pest or power, link in with the parents of the pals and just see if you guys can come up with ahead of time, ideally, look, where are we all at on this? Are we all allowing it? Are we not? What are we saying here? And then ultimately you are responsible for your own child. So even if other families or parents are permitting it, if you are not comfortable with your child having their own social media account or being on these platforms, then you know the answer. Trust your parental instinct. Look, we know 93%, as CyberSafeKids are telling us, you know, that 93% of 8 to 12-year-olds already own these devices, okay? So we know the majority, the pest or power is true. All my friends have it is actually a true statement. So instead you're looking at, okay, what are the boundaries about this? And so many questions come in with this. I think it is about boundaries. It's about saying you can spend X amount of time on this platform, so long as I am one of your friends or followers or whatever language you're using. I have to be on that too. I will be checking in. And if I see anything that doesn't feel comfortable, I'm going to come to you and discuss it with you. But while we're discussing it, you'll be off that platform. Okay. Make a digital contract set of, you know, and again, rules is not a great word because rules are rigid and they kind of feel like, I see your rule and I test you. Okay. But if you put it in terms of a structure and positive language, in this family, we are whatever online. We only talk to people we know. We only accept requests from people we know in the real world. That you positively reframe the language and tell me what you want me to do instead of what you don't want me to do. That's a much more positive outcome. So I would go at it that way.
There's a brilliant question in, which I think will be very relevant to a lot of parents out there with teenagers. Due to my 15-year-old doing school lessons online, how much more time should we allow her on her screen each day? And that, as you say, is due to the extraordinary year. But I get it. And especially for teenagers who are engaging in hour after hour of Zoom lesson, and they are looking at a screen.
Yeah, they are.
And then their downtime is also looking at a screen, and it's not their fault because they haven't been allowed into the classroom. So they have to be allowed, I suppose, a little bit. Would that 15-minute break come into play here as well?
I would say yes, it does. But, you know, I really empathize with this. I hear this from teens so much because even during this pandemic time, my own psychotherapy with teens has been online. So I'm part of their screen time too. And that's been something that we've had to really grapple with as well about, you know, what does that mean? I don't think we can confuse time spent, be it with telehealth therapy, be it with schooling, with actually their playtime, if you like, online. They still need some time, but I think you've got to balance it out because, I mean, I don't know about you, Laura, but I'm doing so much work online that there are times I get to 6 o'clock in the evening and I have a different level of exhaustion. I feel like I have run a marathon when I absolutely haven't left the chair in my office.
The steps are embarrassing.
Oh my God, so bad. And yet I feel physically and also emotionally drained because it's a different type of stimulus. It's a different type of energy that I'm expending. That's also true of our kids. So I would be saying that, yes, they should be allowed time with their friends. Teenagers have had an extraordinarily difficult time in this pandemic. They have been, you know, spoken about badly in the media. They have unfairly, if I'm honest, they have done so well to manage, you know, when this is so counter to everything that they need developmentally. I think we have to give them a break. And if, you know, laughing with their friends, playing games with their friends, if that's what they're doing online, we need to do that. They are going to be, fingers crossed and everything else, getting back to school, you know, and back to their peer group. What we anticipate seeing is, you know, a big improvement quite suddenly with that reconnection in person with friends and teachers. But what we don't want is a rapid return to academic pressure because that's going to then cause a surge in anxiety again. So I think we have to be flexible and adaptable, stay away from rules that are rigid, embrace structure because structure is flexible, structure is adaptable, and say, look, you do need time. You know, just hanging out with your friends online. I'm a bit worried about all the screen time we have in general. How about when you come off school, there's a 30-minute break where we come down, chat, eat, then you can have X amount of time. And then actually we'll agree that there's going to be a 15-minute pause break every so often, because I just want to mind you and make sure that this is good for you and that you're healthy with it. So again, I'm not being punitive, but I'm just saying, look, I just want to make sure this is okay. And look, if it is okay, go for it.
Yeah.
But I'm telling parents, let their teens talk to each other online. It's all they have at the moment.
And actually, speaking of that and engaging with other people online, somebody messaged in, which I think is a really good question. My child enjoys making videos for YouTube. Am I a bad parent for letting them do this? And of course, the explosion of TikTok. And I think in relation to those CyberSafeKids survey, I think TikTok was one of the most popular social media apps.
Yeah,
it is the most popular.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So between YouTube videos and TikTok, I mean, for me, because my kids, sort of enjoyed that last summer, and I felt that they were really engaging with one another. It wasn't as much about the screen. It was the two brothers having fun together and acting out things, or showing, their new trampoline off, or whatever it might have been, making their little videos.
And
they never
families
went anywhere.
were making videos together. Parents and children were doing dances and learning. And there was some lovely stuff with that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the side of, making content can be so much fun. And then you could share that with family members on the family WhatsApp group or whatever it is, or with granny and granddad. And, everybody can just get involved and play. And I think that that's something that's really nice. My own little one, who's really little, only turning 4, she was trying to learn how to floss, so it was like chaos, and not doing it online, doing it in the garden. But then she said to me, do you think that grannies and granddads can do that? And I was like, I love that she even doubted, do you think this is just what kids can do? And she was trying to teach us. So I think there can be a lovely interactive aspect to it. What you want to watch with the TikTok stuff and the YouTube is not what your child is putting up there, because you can have a direct hand in that. It can be creative, it can be collaborative. It's actually who they interact once it is up there. It's other people's content. Once they're on TikTok, who else are they following and seeing? Who are they emulating? Who's influencing them? We really need to be our children's greatest influencer, as parents. And I think on YouTube, watch the comments. If we can disable comments, I would. Because I think you just invite a level of people are very cruel and unfiltered online. And again, I am talking about adults as much as children here. There's adults could learn from this too. But I think if you are doing it, make sure the account is private. And, the question is, am I a bad parent? Oh, this isn't about being a good or a bad parent. This is about trying to parent in a digital age where we're constantly feeling the internet moves at a pace that we can't keep up with. So it is okay to try something out and say to your child, look, I'm saying yes right now, and let's see how it goes. But part of us as a family being online is that we review every month. We sit down and go, look, how has that been? Is it as much fun now as it was a month ago? Is this something that we need to change how we're doing it? That just because you've said yes at the beginning doesn't mean you can't go, hey, I got that wrong. Actually, that didn't work out the way I think it would. I've been watching you and you don't seem to be having as much fun.
So we're allowed to change our mind and take control.
Exactly that. And we're also modeling for our kids that they can change their mind and say, look, this isn't good for me. This isn't. So I would be trying to block the comments. I would be making the account private, and I would be, that you have to approve followers before they're on the accounts. I would be doing a lot of that. But I think if your child is into TikTok, what they're really into, it's not that they're into TikTok, they're into what TikTok enables, which is the dances, the skills, being part of something bigger than themselves. And I think we can be part of that as their parents as well.
Finally, Joanna, before we finish up for the evening, what kind of general advice would you give to parents out there, some of whom have really managed very well with parenting in a digital age, and others like myself who are just sort of entering it now and, facing up to a lot of struggles along the way? What advice? Should we give ourselves a bit of a break? What advice do you have?
Absolutely. Start with the break, end with the break, give ourselves a break. This has been and even taking COVID out of it, actually parenting in a digital age is difficult, because as soon as we feel I've nailed TikTok, I get it, there's something else. And as soon as you've nailed something else, there's yet another thing. And as our children get older, developmentally, when they hit adolescence, and don't forget the terrible 2s and 3s quickly become the even worse 12s and 13s, in terms of them needing and craving privacy and needing and craving that estrangement and separation from us. So if they're too willing to let us onto their accounts, be not suspicious, be curious. Might there be a second set of accounts out there that we don't know about? Okay, because they do need that privacy. So when I'm telling you to be part of your children's life online, I don't mean that you're going to be there like, some kind of, drill sergeant, give me your phone, I'm checking up on you. This is about being playful and being, kind of, okay, let's do it together. Let's discover this together. Before you give your device, any device to your child, 93% of us are doing it. Before we do that, go and get yourself informed. It is no longer acceptable to say, I don't get technology. I'm not really into it. It's beyond me. We have a responsibility now. When I say be interested, I'm also saying be informed. Learn about the device. Go to a techie shop where somebody way more skilled than us will be only delighted to talk you through. Look it up yourself on YouTube, the device, and get somebody to say, here's what this device can do. And then say, am I happy for my child to have a device that has that capacity? Or am I happier for them to have something else? And what might the something else be? But I also think let's just be playful and creative with it. Make sure it's not the only thing that our children are doing for their play. Make sure that we are playing with them. Even 15 minutes a day makes a difference because it's predictable. I can rely on that connection with you. And that also can be any kind of game. You can go on and learn clapping rhythm games, you know, cup of sevens, all of that stuff, because those are rhythm and synchrony. These are games that we know work with this age group and that are really effective. But just be kind to ourselves. I really do. But I think that also starts, Laura, with giving ourselves a break from online, because we are, us adults as well, living our lives online work-wise as well. So make sure that we're taking time out and that we're doing something in the real world for us too, because then we're modeling good behavior and leading by example.
I love that. You're such a calming voice of reason, always, Joanna. And it's been a real pleasure speaking to you this evening. And thank you so much for all those tips. They're just brilliant. I've got them all written down here.
No, I'm delighted. And I just, was struck by the amount of questions, but actually how many of them overlapped. And just, everybody, just to reassure you that we're all going through this at the same pace and we're all experiencing maybe different levels, but the same kind of things.
There's a comfort in that, isn't
we're
there?
in this together, to use that phrase in a different way, but we actually are. So talking to your parent peers about this is also a really nice way to do it. So I'm delighted to have had the opportunity to answer the questions.
Joanna, I've half scribbled your answers down here, but I'm definitely going to watch this back. Thank you so much for all of that wonderful advice. And to our viewers who tuned in this evening, thanks for joining us as well. Parenting in a digital age ain't easy, but as Joanna said, that we need to be kind to ourselves and give ourselves a break. We're not doing a bad job. Is that right, Joanna?
Good enough is good enough, guys.
Exactly.